Hi, this is Lady Tehila from the Coven of the Open Mind, and you're watching Wicca and Witchcraft 101. Hail and welcome. This week we are talking about the Wiccan holidays, the sabbats and the Esbats and the Wheel of the Year. This is the second half of the chapter 2. Well, actually we did most of the chapter in the previous class, and this one is really just 2 sections. This is going to be a lighter lecture, more fun, and the reading is a little bit lighter, and that gives you a chance to catch up. So if you're participating and you want to be caught up, then at the end of this lecture, we will have read Open Minded Wicca, chapters 1 and 2, and we'll be ready to start talking about mind-altering meditation and witchcraft and the practice of magic, which will be super fun in the next few lectures. Spring is blossoming outside and nature is coming alive, so it'll be the perfect time for us to start our Wiccan and witchcraft journeys for those of you who are brand new. So thanks for joining us, and let's get started with today. The word Sabbat, and this probably comes from the same root as Sabbath in other religions, refers to a sacred or holy day. In Wicca, the Sabbats specifically are usually referring to the seasonal changes that are driven by the rotation of the earth around the sun. Within Wicca, as we've talked about in previous lectures, we believe that divinity is found within nature, and that worshiping divinity often means getting out into nature, getting your hands dirty, learning how the natural world operates, and in that way learning something about yourself. And that's exactly what the phrase "as above, so below" means, that we can learn something about the higher planar beings, the machinations of the world, the gods above us or within us or around us. We can learn something about that by having natural experiences and just being ourselves and being in nature, and that's because the higher planes are within and around us, so every experience we have is in a sense divine. But we in Wicca really only celebrate the days that involve changes in the natural world, so the markers for each season. And in reality, the wheel turns on a spectrum, and what we mean when we say the wheel turns, we're really just talking about the nature of the seasons to change with response to the sun, with response to the orbit of the earth around the sun and the manifestations that has for us here in our physical lives, in our physical world. How in many places it will not mean it will not mean necessarily the same things. In many places the seasons are different. They can often be driven by different things like ocean currents or winds instead of the sun, and really the holidays in Wicca are mapped after the seasonal changes of UK and Britain and North America and the regions where this religion largely evolved. So most people will celebrate some aspect of the turning of the wheel. However, what the holidays actually mean and what correspondences you use, all of that is going to vary based on where you live. And the important thing is that you're spending time in your surroundings, doing what is appropriate for your area and using whatever herbs or foods are appropriate for you. So I'm going to go over the things that make sense for most people who practice Wicca, those who live a little bit further away from the equator. But for a lot of people, and if you're in the southern hemisphere, you got to swap the dates. But for a lot of people, they may choose to have different celebrations or traditions or holidays in their own regions, and that doesn't mean they're not Wiccan, because the real belief of Wicca is that the god and goddess is within nature, and that the seasons change in a way that mirrors the way that those forces work in the higher planes of existence, and that you can find wisdom from your natural environment, which is true no matter where you live. So I'll say all that. That's the caveat. Some of this stuff may not apply to you depending on where in the world you're watching my lectures from. Okay. Now, I've put together this diagram to show you the different names that are often used, what the holidays are called. These are largely Gaelic or Germanic terms, or both, some combination of those languages, because much of this is a recreation of Gaulish traditions, and that is something that was like a hodgepodge. Gaul was like a big melting pot crossroads, and that was really the region that gave rise to most of this stuff. Within Wicca, because as above, so below, we literally view the gods as being different and having a different energy and bringing a different kind of influence into our lives depending on what kind of time of the year it is, because nature is having that impact on our lives. So the names here and the story that goes along with these names mirror the way that nature influences us. And the underlying metaphor is, of course, the romantic love between a man and a woman that gives birth to a child, which in this case is the crop. It's the harvest, but it's deeper than that. It is also the fact that no physical being can survive, let alone thrive, in this realm of Asiya, the physical realm. Nobody can survive or thrive without the sacrifice of other beings, be it plants, animals, whatever, in order to create a finite physical manifestation. There has to be a contraction. Something has to give. The infiniteness needs to pull away. So the universe is biased to give room for life to exist. And that includes a theme of sacrifice. So that is a similar theme that you find echoed throughout other religions. And the Wiccan take is largely centered around when the harvest is taken, which is in August. So it said that, the god dies, he sacrifices himself so that we may live and survive, and that is the crop. So I'd like you to keep that in mind. And then I want to just read from Open Minded Wicca. I'm going to just read the introduction to chapter 2. So hopefully you've gotten a chance to read chapter 2 by now, but this may be familiar. But I want to just read it, and I want you to look at this diagram as I read it and watch the flow of energy going around the circle. And this is how the year passes and what it feels like to experience the passage of time as a Wiccan witch. And whenever you feel the energy shift from one of these to the next, that's when the season changes. That's when you do your rituals. And you may do a public ritual closer to the official date. You may do something based on your region, right? So that's why some of these have ranges for the dates. And you may want to do something based on when it feels like the season has changed to you, which is usually not at the dates given here. It's usually somewhere in between, because everywhere is different. At some point, Samhain no longer feels desolate. It no longer feels spooky. It feels like hope. It feels like renewal. You want to start singing Christmas songs. You want to see your family. You want to eat sweets. And that is the real shift between Samhain and Yule. That is the real start of the year. But it happens at some random time, different times for all of us. So we celebrate at the set times or at variable times within the set range. And that's what allows us to all have similar traditions and feel like a religion, like a community, and transcend the individual differences from one region to the next. So with all this in mind, look at the diagram, look at the names, close your eyes, whatever it takes for you to visualize what it is to celebrate this turning of the wheel. In the dark of the darkest night, a cold wind howls through the deadened woods, while all await with bated breath upon the dawn. The pleasant aroma of flowers is long gone from recent memory, and the spooky landscape is damp with rain. Indoors, however, the fire roars and the hearth is joyous. A few hours of carols, of spiced wine and merriment before time finally comes to greet the great God as he rises from the womb. From the lady of the womb, great goddess of the underworld, comes forth the God of love, renewal, and hope, the Lord of rebirth. In splendor and light, yet weak and cold, the young god is born anew, coming forth just a moment sooner than the previous day. A sign, a promise that the darkness won't last forever. The young god grows, and with his aging, so too do the days grow longer. A spark in the waxing light, the day breaks as the sunlight reflects off the melting snow. The goddess springs forth into the world, pure in form, ready for her life to come. Candles are lit, love is spread throughout the world, and the promise of spring lies around the corner. The Lady of Flame greets the Lord of Ice, tempering his frozen heart and thawing the lands he rules. With the arrival of the sweet-scented Lady of Flowers, life begins to return to the world. Everywhere the goddess goes, every dance-like movement of her womanly form brings forth buds throughout the land, crowning the trees, popping out through the frost-tipped ground. The Lord of the Woods walks amongst the trees, following his love, admiring her from afar, as her dance brings forth all the love and life in this world. His handsome form distracts the gaze of the goddess as she sees him for the first time as a man. They meet with love in their eyes, and there is balance in the world. And so they dance together. Nature blossoms around them, and so too does the goddess. Soon the god cannot resist her form, as her beauty is beyond anything he has ever known, and the love in his heart stronger than any ever expressed on this beautiful earth. Her love is strong as well, and his advances are welcome. They unite and become one, and in glory and love does the Lady of the Lake conceive of all which sustains life. She smiles at the blessing inside her, the expression of their love. The Lord of the Hunt, the horned god, smiles back at his love, for soon she shall bear his fruits. Her bosom grows, her tummy stretches, and her body becomes bloated with the blessings of life. The Lady of the Green swells with bounty as the Lord of the Green oversees his land. The day is long, and there is much to be done. The god ensures the crops are sown, and they begin to grow strong under his care. The goddess rests, feeling the peace and serenity of the warm summer months. The heat is welcome, and the days are long and joyous. But no peace can last for long, and as all things mature, all things grow old. The god sees that the crop is well, but he knows that maturation cannot come without sacrifice. The sun is weakening, and time grows thin. His form has aged, and he grows weary as the days begin to wane. Soon the Lady of the Field bears forth his fruits, and in blessed happiness the god and goddess celebrate their child. Yet the crop is ripe, and the time has come for the Lord of the barley to give himself to death, so that the harvest may come. The child is beautiful, and the bounty of the Lord of the harvest is full and blessed, and yet her form takes on the aches of age as well. As she mourns her departed love, and the world grows heavy with the scent of death and the start of decay, she knows only too well the value of sacrifice, and offers up the bountiful child to sustain the life of this world. In wisdom, she recounts the life she had been blessed to live, and her beloved Lord of the Sheath protects her heart from the sadness of maturation. Soon she will be with her love, and together they will be one, in death as it was in life. The goddess grows weary, and in her turn passes away. All things warm and light, all things loving and happy depart from this world, as death hangs heavy in the air, nestled amongst the faded trees and buried beneath the browning leaves which gather upon the ground. The wind begins to howl, and the air grows cold. But the Lord and Lady of Shadows fret not, for they are once again one, united in death, timeless and honored by those who would remember their beauty and their sacrifice. United, her womb grows full again, this time of a new light, of life yet to come. By the Lord of shadows shall come forth the greatest of lights, the waxing of the sun. And as the wheel does turn, so too does the world. All things wax and all things wane. Fret not the sadness of the coming darkened days, for soon they shall give forth to the mighty dawn the beauty of spring and the blessings of summer. Blessed are the Lord and Lady, for through them does all life come, and to them does all life return. Blessed be. So this is just an illustration of one way that the names are looked at and how the changing wheel is seen by people. There are many names that people will use instead of these. Many will also call the god the Holly King during the winter and the Oak King in the summer at Litha and Yule. And those are probably the two most masculine holidays, so they really celebrate the god the most. The birth and the peak of the god are the two most masculine. Now, there are many names that people will use that differ from these. Some will say goddess of the forest, god of the forest. They will call them Fauna and Cern, and they will call them that from Imbolc, Ostara, sometimes even Beltane. And that will be like the waxing phase, and that would be more common in places where maybe the springtime comes on differently. And then the full stage you may call Diana or Lupercus. Some will say Lucifer. Some consider Lucifer to be the brother of Diana. Some call him Father Time. And then they will call those stages, the mother and father stages, the goddess of the moon and the god of the sun. So those would be like, in the Litha, Lammas, maybe even Mabon time frame, the summer. And then there is also Uni and Tani. Some will use Uni and Tani for Yule and Imbolc. Tani spelled Tagni, Tani, right? So it's like Italian spelling. And these are more Italian. These are more Gaulish witchcraft, less Gaelic. So the Gaelic is more what you see on the slide, and more Gaulish or Italian-based witchcraft will have a slightly different take because it's Mediterranean, so it doesn't experience the seasons in the same way. So they'll start with the firstborn goddess, the firstborn god, Yule and Imbolc. They'll have the goddess and god of the forest in the summer, spring, summer. They'll have the goddess of the moon, the goddess of the sun in the late summer going back into the winter. And they don't really have a winter proper. So maybe if you live in California, you'd be more inclined to go with this Italian because you don't have a winter either or something, right? So that's something to keep in mind. There are different ways of naming these, and they all take the three forms. They all take the waxing, full, waning, child, warrior, whatever form, and then mother, father, full form, and then the waiting stage, which is like a sage or a wise person of some kind, a keeper of wisdom, a guide. That's the later stages. So no matter what you call them, it's all going to be similar to that in theory. So there, now we have covered this in depth conceptually, and we can just talk about each of these holidays. I'm largely just going to be reading off the slides here. This is just a quick overview of each of them to give you a full perspective of them from a conceptual standpoint, and then you should go ahead and have your own relationship with these concepts and devise your own celebrations. We also have a series that is specifically on the sabbats, and it covers topics related to themes that are similar from Christianity to paganism, from the different holidays, and like for instance the Easter one we just did, Ostara, we talked about why the Easter bunny leaves us eggs, right, which is silly. So there are things that we're covering in more depth in the Sabbats 101 series, and I will make sure there is a button at the top to push to go watch that. But for now, we're just going to cover it from a super high level, talk about each one. If you have any questions, you want to tell me your favorite, put that in the comments, join our Discord server. And okay, so the first one is Yule. This occurs on the winter solstice, which is the shortest day of the year, and that will vary from region to region and from year to year. Now, many people will just celebrate it on the 20th or 21st because that's conventional, but some will stick to, okay, whatever day is the actual shortest day this year, that's the day I'm going to do my ritual on. They will often do ritual first thing in the morning at sunrise, which that time of year is not that early. And then there's often like a brunch style feast after that on the day of. Many people will have the party, part of this, the celebration the night before. The underlying theme of Yule, as we said in our story, the underlying theme is the rebirth of the god. So the mother, she grows either one child a year or two children a year, depending on who you ask. In one, she grows the child of life, sacrifices the child of life so that her children, us, can survive. And that is the one theme. And other people don't like that as much, so the idea is that she gets pregnant by the god when they are alive, and then when they go to the underworld, she is still pregnant, and that is closer to like 9 months. It feels more like a pregnancy. And then she'll give birth on Yule, rather. So if she gets pregnant on May 1st, she gives birth on Yule, that is like 7 months, so it feels more like a pregnancy. So some people will say that she gives birth her child and then sacrifices that child for her other children, and some say that she has the child, carries it to term, and gives birth on Yule, and that she conceives in the realm of the living and gives birth in the realm of the dead. So there's two different kind of mythologies. Both of them are decidedly Wiccan, and which one you want to subscribe to is totally up to you. And what do we do on the shortest day? Well, we keep each other company, we celebrate, we give gifts, often things that have sentimental value or that are homemade. Usually like one big nice thing that is like very conventional for Yule. People will play bells, people will carol, sing songs, make chocolate, make sweets, just things that make you feel warm and that remind you that you have people who care about you and that the days are getting longer, so the darkness will not go on forever. And it's not as much about the promise of, it's more just like hope. The promise of hope, the promise of return is more Imbolc. And that's like the distinction between the two winter holidays. One is like, okay, I hope things will turn around. And the other one is like, things are turning around, I can tell. So for Yule, you're going to decorate shiny baubles, you're going to hang stuff up, you're going to bring fresh evergreens inside the house, and you can often keep those alive indoors for quite some time because they don't need a lot of water. It helps freshen the air. People will burn Yule logs. People will play games, make merry. They will exchange gifts. They will go wassailing. Wassailing is when you go around town and you sing songs or make a fuss and be raucous in exchange for ale or sweets of some kind. And it's something that like mostly poor people used to do in wealthy neighborhoods because it was Christmas and everyone felt bad, so they would go around and sing songs and beg for tips basically. But I mean, it's really fun, and there's like the Gloucester Wassail carol by Lorena McKennitt that you can go listen to if you want like just a theme, a hint of that. A lot of people today just go caroling. They don't accept food from strangers, especially alcohol. But they do go around and sing songs and try to spread cheer. You eat spiced wine, mead, things with cinnamon, ginger, and other seasonings or spices, warm drinks, sugary drinks, things that make you feel comfy and sleepy, fruit pies and fruit preserves. They've already started preserving the stuff that they harvested at Mabon and Samhain usually is when you would start preserving things. And so by this time of year, you're eating preserves, but you probably still have some fresh fruit lying around or in a freezer somewhere, and that might get baked into a pie. Especially pumpkin pie is common, as well as nut pies. Bakables and things you put in the oven, sugar cookies, right? Popcorn and things that you can use as decoration as well is very common, especially like wreaths made out of candy. That's one tradition that some people have, so lots of stuff like that. Okay, for Imbolc. Imbolc takes place on February 1st. It is a fixed holiday. The fixed holidays celebrate the fact that, you know, at the same time every year, things are moving on. And it doesn't really matter exactly what day it happens. It's not like there's some big solar event. It's just like, okay, we're entering a new season because the angle the sun is making with the earth has changed. So the fixed holidays are celebrating that really truly ordered energy, and they occur exactly on the same day every year. And whether or not you actually feel like you're in a new season on the day you celebrate is another story. But a lot of people do tend to feel that shift sometime before the fixed holiday, and then the fixed holiday is just a way of saying, okay, it's officially a new season now. So Imbolc is a celebration of the rebirth of the goddess. So she, in her youngest form, is a pure virgin maiden. Okay, that's the origin of it, probably. But it doesn't have to mean that now. Just pure and innocent and wholesome. Someone who cares more about happiness and exploring life than they care about, meeting love or, having, sex or whatever the case may be. And she represents the flame. She represents the passion at this time of the year. And or some take her to represent the ice, and they say that the god has to be sweet to her so that he can melt the ice. And some will put it the other way around. So either way, it's really just that the Lord and Lady are falling in love, and one of them has a frozen heart and the other is melting it, and that is the essence of preparation. That is the metaphor of anticipation, preparation, getting ready for the season to come. People will light candles in this capacity to represent promise, a light in the dark. They will write love letters. People are usually making handwritten things, writing the words themselves. The idea of the modern Valentine that you give to people you barely even know, probably not. That has its roots in paganism. That's modern Hallmark holiday stuff. But writing love letters and lighting candles and etching on candles and transcribing things and making spell bottles, all very common. Some of the associations and different things this time of year will include like dried herbs, especially sage, rosemary. Pine often is still alive during this season. It starts to die, so people will harvest the needles and make pine-based incenses. Orange and lemon are also common because they bring vitality and strength, and they fight illness, and your vitamin D is low this time of year, so you kind of need that. And that's some of the associations. What you do is, again, write love letters, exchange letters with friends and family, usually handwritten, usually highly detailed. You're in love with them, you have something important to say to them, and not just a Hallmark card that you sign. Carve, paint, or decorate candles. Create spell bottles which capture the waxing energy, so it's the very beginning of the year, everything is really just waxing on. You want to capture that in a bottle that you can carry with you or charge under each full moon throughout the season of life, and that will bring you abundance and blessing and that waxing energy into your life all the time. And a lot of people will go wander outside in the cold and the snow and make snowmen and that sort of thing, and just try to find beauty in the desolate landscape. They eat berries and nut preserves, nuts, nut pies, nut butters, cured meats and cheeses, anything that is aged and a little bit older that has survived through the winter, crackers and savory foods, dried spices, herbs, peppermint. You're clearing out your pantry, you're getting ready for the spring in this and in Ostara, which is a variable spring Sabbat and the first day of spring. Some people take Imbolc to be the first day of spring. That's not very common because for most people it's still cold and there's often still snow on the ground until, the end of March. But as the seasons switch, maybe people will have a different attitude about this kind of stuff. But for the large majority of people, Ostara is considered the first day of spring. It's the spring equinox, and it is about falling in love, young love, stupid, reckless love, dancing in the wild all night long, barefoot, you know. Flowers are beginning to bloom, picking fresh flowers to give to your loved ones. Birds are beginning to sing. The season of life is beginning. People will often have lunchtime feasts and rituals, usually in the mid-morning. People will go on fairy hunts. They'll go hiking, they'll be out in the woods, they'll get out in nature, they'll be gardening is very common. Some associations, fresh flowers, plants to freshen the home, lemon, mint, other fresh scents like that. Baskets, anything woven, hares and birds, representations of luck and fertility. So if you're curious about that, go check out the Sabbat series. Eggs of all kind, decorated or filled with treats. We celebrate the Easter Bunny is largely pagan, so many pagans will celebrate Easter. We have the bunny come on Easter because that's when the bunny visits most people. Some people have the bunny come on Ostara. I guess the bunny just keeps track of that kind of thing. And decorating eggs. That's a big one. So you can decorate eggs, you can weave baskets, you can weave hair, you can go hare hunting or hare watching, looking for rabbits out in nature. You can make rabbit's feet if you trap rabbits and you believe in that kind of thing. And those have the most powerful luck and fertility powers of all the rabbit's feet, as they say. Egg decorating, egg hunting, anything that takes you outside. Eggs, eggs, eggs. You eat deviled eggs, you eat egg salad, hard-boiled eggs, cakes and sweets made with eggs, bread with eggs, challah, berry, fruit preserves, quiche and other eggy dishes. Oh, I make a mean quiche this time of year. Puddings, purees, sprout seeds and nuts, also common. Dried fruits and aged wines and cheeses left over from the previous year. Again, you're clearing out your pantry. It's time for the season of life. Okay, Beltane. Beltane occurs on May 1st, and it celebrates marriage, hand fasting, the union of fate. It is sometimes also called May Day, and it is also a celebration of sex and love and intimacy and conception and fertility. The god and goddess are deeply in love. She becomes swollen, she's pregnant. The veil is thin between the Summerland and our realm, so it's said that fairies are abundant, so people will often go out and go do fairy hunts in nature. That could be a euphemism because people are often also slipping off to have some alone time between couples. That's very common for people to do a actual great rite with their partners for Beltane, usually not in public spaces. And the great rite is definitely a feature of the ritual this time of year. Even in eclectic covens, usually even the ones that are less focused on conception will still do some version of the symbolic great rite in their coven rituals this time of year, because this is the holiday that celebrates heterosexuality of them all. This is the most. So some people will still do that celebration even if they distance themselves from the concept of fertility throughout the rest of the Wiccan, holidays. Some associations, flowers are starting to bloom. Lilac is popular. Cherry and apple flower blossoms are often used as decor on altars. The chalice and the athame usually feature prominently on the altar. Maypoles, ribbons, baskets, woven things, sweets and flowers, all very common. People will go out and explore parks, they'll go hiking, they'll start camping, they'll look for sacred spaces in nature, fairy rings, they'll do ad-lib magic. The world is alive, the veil is thin, now is the time to learn witchcraft and have fun and practice and just be out in nature and learn what the fairies like. Braid your hair, braid flowers into crowns to wear in your hair, spend time with significant others or trying to meet significant others if you do not have one, then that would be the time to do it. And now the first of the crops are coming in. You've got fresh salad, fresh veggies, fresh cabbage, mostly lettuces are fresh. You've got vegetables with dip, onions and garlic and stuff that maybe is left over, dried herbs, especially rosemary and savory herbs, flowers like dandelion, which are blooming early and are edible and so good for you. So dandelion biscuits are very common. Maybe I'll put a recipe. Maybe I'll start a series on cooking for the Sabbats after we're done with the Sabbats 101 series. That would be a lot of fun. Okay, so honey, especially pink and sweet wines and mead, which is made from honey, goat cheese and soft cheeses. You're harvesting it fresh, right? So the calves are being born. You're taking some of the extra milk. You're making goat milk and or fresh cheeses, mozzarella, goat cheese, you know, fresh soft cheeses, fresh butter, fresh milk. Cream is common. Teas, especially orange, green, and black, are also very common this time of year, and that is Beltane. Litha is a variable summer sabbat, and it occurs on the summer solstice, which is sometime in the end of June. Varies from place to place and region to region. Some just pick the 20th or 21st because it's conventional. Some will go by whatever day is the longest. The equinoxes, the fall and spring equinox, that's whatever day has equal daytime, equal nighttime. It's as close to 12 hours and 12 hours as you get. In some areas it doesn't get all the way to 12 and 12, but in some areas it does. And that would be the equinox. And then in the summer and winter solstice, it's the longest day in the summer and the shortest day in the winter. So those are the variable holidays. The rest are just on the first of whatever month. So for Litha, that's at the end of June. It marks the start of summer. Most people take the start of summer to be the lily blossom. The lily blossom, that's a summer plant. Whenever the lilies blossom, that's the first day of summer. I do it that way. Lots of people do it that way. It's very traditional. But you celebrate on the summer solstice. And that's just because that goes with the energies of the stars in the heavens, right? So nature can celebrate at any time. You can start to do summer things at any time, but you do the official ceremony and you pull from that fixed, full energy, the energy of the mother and the father in their full form. You do that usually on the actual summer solstice, the peak of the year. It's really hot, so a lot of people will sleep all day and stay up all night. And they will celebrate it like a festival oftentimes, where the first day they stay up all night partying and watch the sun rise in the morning, and then they go to sleep and then they wake up and do a late afternoon ritual, and then they'll feast in the evening going all the way into the nighttime, and often they'll have a fire late at night when it's not too warm anymore. Sometimes it's too hot even for that. Pool parties are common, lake parties. Camping out in nature is common. It's hot, so you stay up late when it's dark outside and you sleep during the day. Orange, ginger, and myrrh are very common scents this time of year. They're very musky and strong, and they bring vitality and energy, so those are common. Lilies, lilacs, very common, often featuring prominently on the altars, or lilacs making their way in with the myrrh into the incense blend. Natural representations of the elements are common this time of year because it's the peak of the season of life. So you want to put actual dirt on your table. Do it, okay? Put some dirt on your table. Put a bowl of water. Put some lilies floating in it, right? Get some worms in that dirt, right? Like, do it, okay? That's the perfect way to represent the elements. It's the summer, and you should do it. They'll have, real fires. They'll have incense blends made specifically for this, that they keep going the whole time they're celebrating, 24 hours around the clock for 3 or 4 days straight. And it's the berry harvest. The strawberries and other berries are just coming to sprout, and so people will often have berry salad and have chocolate dipped berries and that sort of thing. Mortars and pestles are common, crystals, green foliage, also seashells and sand from the beach, all things that are very common on the altar. People are eating berries, fresh berries, fruit salads, strawberry shortcake, edible flowers. People are drinking sweet teas and wines, especially dry wines. Tea is common. Hibiscus, green, lighter teas are usually more common. Sangria, lemonade, and other fruity drinks. There's a lot of drinks for Litha because it's summer and it's hot. Cucumber water is a big one. I didn't put that on here because the slide is limited. But salads, fresh veggies, potato and pasta salads. A lot of people are harvesting potatoes fresh by now. They've got leftover, flour from last year, so they're grinding out pasta, trying to clear out their cabinets and get ready for the wheat harvest, which is the holiday after this one. Barbecue sauce and tomato sauce is common because tomatoes are starting to come in this time of year. Also eating hens or chickens. So the older hens, they've had babies. Now this is when oftentimes they'll start slaughtering hens and chickens in the year, so they make it on the feast table, as well as coffee and chocolate. And usually you're going to be talking about more bitter foods, things that make you have energy and have a lot of fiber and help you just feel like, yeah, let's go, let's do it. People will sunbathe and do something called chasing the sun, right? You know, like that song's like, we're gonna be chasing the sun, Okay, so that's like a pagan origin where you like stay up all night until the sun rises. And people will do that because it's hot during the daytime, so they stay up at night instead, and they're chasing the sun. People will be finding a natural swimming hole, going to go camp outside and hiking, playing outdoor games, going to the park, having barbecues, and staying up to watch the sunrise. So that's Litha. Lugnasa, also called Lammas. Lammas, it means bread harvest or loaf mass, and it's more of a Christian phraseology. It's more common in Italian witchcraft and more Gaulish witchcraft. Lugnasa or Lunasa, you'll hear people say Lunasa, that's more like Welsh pronunciation. Lugnasa is more Scottish pronunciation. It's a celebration of the goddess Lu or Luch, depends on how you pronounce it, where you're from in the UK. So it's all just valid, different pronunciations of the same thing. And it directly means August in Old Gaelic, in Old Celtic. So it's the celebration of the wheat harvest, which occurs around this time, usually a little after this, sometimes a little before. Definitely there's mature wheat and you're making fresh bread from fresh wheat. And the god passes away, and that's why we're able to harvest. His body is in the crop, right? So that's very Christian too, like the body of Christ is the crackers. Well, that's the same in paganism. The god is in the wheat. So we all worship bread. And, you know, the goddess is aging as well, and her child is born, right? That's the harvest. So some will say that the god is the harvest and he sacrifices himself. Some will say the goddess gives birth to the crop and then they sacrifice the child. Some say that they sacrifice the child on Mabon and the child lives a solid life first and then passes away. It's all just different versions of the same thing. So you got to find whatever one makes the sense to you. I tried to do a very generic one in the start here so that you could read whatever version of it you prefer. She gives birth for the harvest, and then the second harvest is like the maturation of that crop, and then on the third harvest it's the harvest of the soul. So that would be the day that it's all just dead now and you're harvesting him as a soul. I don't know, there's different there's different metaphors, but this is the celebration of the wheat harvest. And you're making fresh bread, you're having bonfires, especially you're still staying up late, it's hot during the daytime. You probably are out working in the fields a lot during the daytime, so at night you're laying around, you're having ales, you're drinking things that take the edge off of the pains and the aches of working outside. You're also usually eating anti-inflammatories or inflammatories, depending on what kind of person you are, but things that keep away the mosquitoes. Okay, so onions, chives, and garlic, very common. Coffee is still very common this time of year. That's anti-inflammatory. So it depends on what kind of person you are, what is in your diet, but some combination of that kind of stuff, usually because of the heat, and it's just like helping you treat yourself when it's really hot. Hibiscus tea is very common as well. It's relaxing and helps you feel cool when it's on ice or mixed with milk or cream. People will use wood wands this time of year, especially. If people use crystal wands throughout the rest of the year, on this holiday they often have a wood wand just for this holiday. It's often made of oak. Many people will still be working with the Oak King at this time of year. Some will call him the god of the hunt, you know, so lots of different terms. Acorns and freshly woven brooms that you weave from what you're harvesting outside. As everything starts to turn brown and pass away, you harvest it and turn it into something productive. Make bread, harvest things, do crafts, make wicker dolls that represent loved ones or that have passed away or the gods, and then you burn them to represent the harvest, their sacrifice. And when you do that, you say a blessing and you're like, thank you, and I'm celebrating your life. It's kind of like a funeral for the gods, if you will. Going out in nature to pick fresh herbs is very common. Digging in the dirt, gardening, bonfires in the evenings, playing outdoor games. You make lots of bread, all day bread. Pies are very common this time of year, especially fruit pies, berry pies. The peaches are coming ripe. The berries are all harvested. A lot of mammal meat. The theme of sacrifice for meat eaters is very strong. A lot of people, this is when you butcher the animals. You butcher a pig, you butcher a couple cows, animals that are getting old anyway. Then you know, would preserve and store everything, and some of it you cook fresh for this holiday for Mabon. Maybe even some of it is still fresh by Samhain, but by later in the year it's all cured meats or things that you've frozen if you live in a place that freezes. This holiday, you're also eating a lot of like zucchinis and eggplants, fresh veggies out of the garden that have come to you, especially tomatoes are common, tomato sauce. Frying or battering these veggies is very common, especially frying, battering zucchini, eggplant, jalapenos, and peppers, and then dipping them in a tomato sauce, right? Or frying cheeses like mozzarella cheese, fresh cheeses. All of that is very common this time of year because it uses flour, and you put flour and wheat in everything this time of year. You've got an abundance of wheat. It's the wheat harvest. So also beer and ale is very common. Bitter reds, dry whites, more mature wines are more common this time of year than sweet ones, but they're still putting a lot of sugar in their tea usually, and they're still putting their tea over ice. Usually black or green, sometimes hibiscus still as well, yeah. Okay, so Mabon is next. Mabon is the variable fall Sabbat that occurs at the end of September. Again, it's arranged. It'll be wherever the day and night are equal length. It's the equinox. It's the celebration of the second harvest, which is the apple, corn, and squash harvest. So the goddess is said to be in those crops. The leaves are changing. The goddess is dying. In her maturation, you see beauty, right? Women are most beautiful during the autumn of their lives, right? So that's what people say. She's an aged beauty. And that's the case, and that's represented in aged cheeses and aged wine. And now you're getting the harder cheeses, cheddar, and the ones that take a little bit of time to firm up. And you're getting those really rich, full flavors that make you feel alive even as the world dies around you. It's a time of abundance. It's also called the Witches' Thanksgiving. And we eat everything this time of year. You're eating a lot, putting weight on. You're going into the winter months, you know, so that's okay. You spend a lot of time reflecting and thinking about the year, resting from the harvest season, just like starting to preserve foods in the later parts of Mabon. Some common associations are cinnamon, allspice, and cloves, any kind of spice that keeps you warm as the evenings grow colder. Apples, squash, and corn are common for decor as well as for food because there's just so much of them this time of year. Corn dolls instead of wheat or wicker dolls, you have corn dolls. Also freshly woven brooms made from more mature materials, corn stalks and other things, corn fibers. Often woven things that are like intricately woven that maybe you've been working on since Beltane. That's very common this time of year as well. Putting together quilts, that sort of thing. Getting ready for winter. Incenses of all varieties are blended this time of year with all the herbs and resins, getting stuff ready to be preserved and used throughout the winter months when you don't have much access to supplies, all very common for Mabon. You eat, drink, and celebrate abundance. Many people will make paper or write on fancy paper to celebrate the sheath and the education, and that's why you go back to school this time of year, and it's this theme of like, okay, I'm going to be studious and learn. That is the influence of Virgo. Many people will go walk through the woods. They will gather leaves and acorns for the altar. Cooking all day is common with the door wide open. It's hot in the kitchen, so you open the door because outside it's not too cold during the daytime. It's nice. It's the end of summer, you know, so a lot of barbecues are still going on this time of year. Bonfires, making effigies out of corn instead of wheat to burn. Weaving fresh brooms, especially now with cinnamon in them. Cooking all day and just having a fun time and eating lots of food, including apples or corn that you've gotten harvested by hand. So that's all common. Mashed potatoes, sweet potatoes, casseroles, pasta salads. You've got lots of wheat, so you're making lots of bread, especially cornbread. Pies, nuts, fruit pies, peach pies, apple pies, you name it. I make like 4 or 5 pies every Mabon. I never eat them all. They go to the squirrels. But still. Squash, spaghetti squash is the most common. Zucchini or eggplant is very common this time of year. All different kinds of meats. You've harvested everything now. You've gotten it all out of its skin, off of its bones. Turkeys, chickens, hens, ribs, pork, roast. Things that cook all day in a crock pot are starting to become common. common, but that's more common in Samhain. Anything that has balsamic and vinegar or pesto, basil kind of taste buds, mead, red wine blends, distilled harvest liquors, fruit liqueurs, ales, ciders, lots of alcohol this time of year. Everything is fresh, everything is delicious. There is abundance in the world, so you eat and eat and eat. And then you come to the third harvest. The third harvest is the soul harvest. It's the day when the veil is thinnest and you can experience death energy and ghosts everywhere you go. Memories are all around you. It takes place on November 1st. Many will celebrate the eve of, and rituals usually at midnight between the 31st and the 1st. Most people consider Samhain to be the last day of the year, and most people consider Yule to be the start of the new year. And the space in between is called the dead days. On the dead days, during the dead days, people don't believe you can do magic. They don't believe that magic has a large source, or they get worried that the magic will be influenced by chaos because of the lack of life energy in the world around in the world around you. A lot of people just don't have the drive to do magic at that time, and for many that lasts all the way through Imbolc, and the dead days start on Samhain, and the year starts before magic starts. We can't do magic again until the goddess is reborn. When the goddess dies, magic ceases. When the goddess is reborn, magic is returned. Many people view magic itself as being feminine, but it's really a balance of both energies, so it just depends, and everyone's a little bit different. But a lot of people feel like, I'm just not going to do magic this time of year. I'm going to reflect. Mirrors are common. Things that involve reflection. Going to graveyards, honoring loved ones. Labyrinths represent journeying through life, learning lessons as you go. So like the S.J. Tucker song, Come to the Labyrinth, if you've heard that one, where you're holding a light and carrying it through the labyrinth to represent your sorrows and your lessons and your suffering, which are a blessing because they allow you to overcome and become the person you are today and become a better person. The god and goddess are reunited in the underworld, so you have this sense of equality in the world. You also can just experience death energy everywhere you go. Acorns, pine cones are common on altars, dead leaves, dead flowers, just dead things, skulls or bones. If you don't like the idea of killing animals, you could just use an owl pellet and dissect it. That's what I did when I was a vegetarian and I first started doing Wicca and Witchcraft. I dissected owl pellets and put the bones in the bottom of a faux skull and melted wax over top of them, and that became my death candle holder in my honor for the altar of the dead. Many people have two altars this time of year, one for life and one for death, and many will have just one that has death as a central theme, or that has the cauldron at the center of it. Cauldrons represent transformation, so this time of year transformation is the big theme. Brooms are a big decoration piece because they represent purification and protection from spirits. If they fall over and they're in a doorway and they fall, then that's said to have, it alerts you that a spirit has entered, some ill fate has come your way because the broom fell over in the doorway. Books and journals are common this time of year and symbols of self-improvement. Black mirrors on the altar, reflection, things that represent reflection. Cinnamon and other spices, again, that help keep you warm at night. Lanterns and candles are common on the altar, all that sort of stuff. People go and make pilgrimages to sacred spaces, even if it's not a graveyard. People will seek out abandoned homes. They'll go ghost hunting. They'll just be seeking stories and memories and things that help them feel connected to the past. People will reflect on themselves and on transformation and on how to learn from their own lessons in life. They'll remember loved ones, especially with a dumb supper, which is where you just sit in a room and eat a meal with yourself, with others, with loved ones, or with no one, and you say nothing and do nothing, and there's no sound, and you just sit and eat a meal in complete silence. Often it's with dim lighting or with fog machines or incense as well, things that'll help you get into an altered state. Some people will serve mugwort or malign tea, and that can have some psychoactive effects, and they'll just, try to get in a mindset where they can see and interact with their loved ones as if they were having a meal with them, and that's a dumb supper. Dumb because you're not speaking. And then, yeah, mugwort and malign, Ouija boards, very common this time of year. Divination is very common. The veil is thin. Using death energy for divination is what most people will do. Pomegranates are really common this time of year, especially as altar pieces or offerings, because it represents many tiny seeds that all together make one fruit. And that's like a representation of consciousness. We are all many tiny consciousnesses that make up one consciousness. So that idea of many into one is common this time of year. So pomegranates are popular. Soups, particularly soul soup, soul food, braised meats, roasts, things that cook all day in a crock pot, cooked herbs and cooked veggies, squashes and pumpkins in all varieties, pumpkin pie, squash, pumpkin in the oven, pumpkin soup, all kinds of things that have that. Apples are still common, nut pies, apple pies, cheese pies, like cheesecake, very common this time of year. The soft cheeses are going bad. Cream cheeses start going bad. So this time of year, you bake it all up and eat it. Rosemary, sage, thyme, peppers, and spices, things that keep you feel warm inside. When it's spooky and cold, you want to feel alive. So you eat these kinds of things. Dark red wines are very common, as well as dry white wines and ciders like apple, pear, and other harvest ciders are common. And that is Samhain. So that takes us through the wheel of the year, and now we will talk a little bit about Esbats. Esbats are lunar holidays, and these are secondary holidays for Wiccans. They are less important. People usually will still take the time to celebrate in some capacity. Most people will do a full moon ritual. Not everyone does a ritual, and there's lots of reasons why you might miss it, but most people will still take time to reflect on the moon. They'll do divination, they'll do fertility magic or other spell work, and they'll just cleanse their crystals and just make use of this energy. And often you'll hear people refer to dates by the moons. They'll say the full moon of Litha, the second full moon of Lammas, and that is one way that, you know, they keep track of events, like two hands on a clock, right? So you have the season and then the moon, and that's the two hands. Okay, so what do you do in a lunar holiday? You draw down the moon. We are going to spend a whole multiple lectures talking about invocation and evocation and spell work and when you do it and what moon phase is which and all this kind of stuff. I just wanted to talk about, in this case, from a high level, what it is to do magic on a full moon, what it is to celebrate a full moon in Wicca, and not just any kind of pagan tradition. In Wicca, we view the moon as being a goddess figure most of the time. Sometimes you will work with a god archetype, a male archetype for the moon, you know, masculine and feminine within each other, within all things. So you can do that sort of thing, but usually we view the moon as being our goddess, and we draw down the moon, and what we mean by that is we invoke the goddess into ourselves. That is done through chanting and drumming and bringing the energy down, invocations, and then once the High Priestess feels like she's possessed by the goddess, she may have a change in demeanor or a change in speech, and at that time she will then recite the charge of the goddess, and by the time that blessing is done, she's already coming out of that goddess state. And it's a controlled kind of possession. It's like, okay, goddess, come inside and I will be the goddess and speak these words with the meaning and value and love of the divine through me. Now, there are 13 full moons in a year, and there's 13 lunar months in a year, and there's 8 sabbats. So those are the two, like, that's like the clock for the wheel of the year. Usually the ritual is late in the evening when the moon is overhead. You will charge, cleanse crystals, make moon water, do magic, do divination, harvest herbs. This at full moons, it's very common. Honor female divinity, and bless mooncakes and other kinds of food in order to signify like a sacrifice, or like you could bless it and then leave it for the gods, you know, outside usually. Okay, the charge of the goddess. The charge of the goddess is something that was originally written by Charles Godfrey Leland in the late 1800s or early 1900s. I think it was 1899 actually. And he hated Christianity in his original charge is very like vehemently anti-Christian and is like, be violent against Christians because they deserve it. Or just like, they're all sheep and you're the wolf and wolves eat sheep. You know, it's kind of like that energy to it. I'm not a big fan. Gardner rewrote it, but he put a lot of these and thys and thines in it, and I honestly, I'm just when I try to say it, it's too many the sounds. It drives me crazy. So I went ahead and rewrote it. And this is like the open-minded charge of the goddess, if you will. And many traditions will have their own. And I rewrote it with a very specific amount of syllables per line and a very complex rhyming pattern so that it would feel highly ordered and very unique from the kinds of things that you would do for your own personal magic. And that helps it feel divine and have this essence of order and divinity when you hear it. So I'll just go ahead and read it now, and if you ever want to join us, we do live lunar rituals on our server most of the time, and those you can just join our Discord server and see when they happen, and we link circle and do it together, and you can hear me recite this charge, or you could do a charge of your own and recite it for yourself. It's really up to you, but if you ever need a hearth, you can have ours and join us anytime. And this is the charge. It is true that a spirit they are, born but to again become mortal. Down to earth below, teach near and far the natural wisdoms of the earth to any who would accept the toil. And be not like others who follow, who grovel, who hope, only dreaming, helplessly floating along, hollow. Be not greedy, not lustful, harmless. Less to those folk whom ye find scheming. Empowered be ye. Strong minds, strong hearts are come to those who study the craft. Awareness flows. All must play their part. Seek ye the mystery, forever wary of fullness, of growing daft. When I seem departed from this world, fret not. Seek me out in need and kind. Once a month when the moon is full, assemble in a deserted place. Open to me your body and mind. Gather in forests, in rooms of books. Join ye together to adore me, the mother goddess, queen of witches. Aid will come to those who speak my name, who seek magic, mystery revealed. In this way be your chains unbinded. Be free in mind and heart. Speak on the truth. Be open-minded. Bide the witch's law in perfect love, perfect trust by light of moon and sun. So shall thine will therefore come to pass. The witch's right be done. Blessed be. I can't even say it and recite it for you now without feeling like I am invoking divinity. It is such a highly ordered, very specific rhyming patterns, very interesting and unique, and it's not obvious what the order and everything is on the surface, but when you start to recite it and you read it and you get down into it and you start speaking the words, you realize the power of them and the power of words. And that is the whole point of the charge of the goddess. It is the power of spoken word and order that comes from those words and how that connects us to divinity. And in humanity, it's words. In other species, it could be song, it could be movement of the body. Everyone has these rituals that represent language, and that order is divinity manifest through us all. So this is a celebration of the language component, and the words of power are similar when you do spells. It is the power of the word. You know, it's the power of order that makes a spell powerful. And it doesn't have to be like, it can be a prose, it just has to be deliberately ordered. You have to put thought into it. It has to be poetic, dramatic, emphatic. We will talk about all of that in later lectures when we talk about evocation and invocation and what it means to actually do spells, which is our next lecture, which will be on Sunday at 3 p.m. We're starting to do the lectures on Sunday now, so hopefully that doesn't mess with anyone's cadence. Sorry. This time, if you're doing the homework, it's chapter 2, just 2 questions, 24 and 25. The questions have you recount the holidays. So what I really want you to do is think of what the holidays mean to you and write that out and relate them back to the Wiccan celebrations in some way. The reading is just
2 sections. It's like 14 pages. It's very light. A lot of it is just stuff that you refer to when you're trying to plan your holiday and not stuff you even really remember or write down. The exercises is the first one for this chapter. I don't know why I put the exercises in the reverse order at the end of the chapter, because I work with chaos probably. But if you want to, you can submit all of this. It will be in our courses in our Google Classroom. You can feel free to submit to us, email us, Covenant of the Open Mind, join our Discord server, all of it. The info that you need to participate, get feedback if you'd like it, is in the description of the video. And I'm just here to empower all of you to learn Wicca in your own solitary way. If you didn't want to learn it in a solitary way, I assume you would find a coven. So we are a coven for solitaries, for people that don't fit into other covens. So if you're still watching these lectures, you probably belong here. Hail and welcome. And on that note, I will leave you all and see you next week. Thank you for watching, and from everyone here at the Covenant of the Open Mind, blessed be.